Hi guys! So, I have taken a break from my musical guitar adventure things and I brought out my laptop again and I am going to talk about something which may not seem very interesting at first, but it's really interesting, trust me. It's called the spirituality of Christ and how um, solitude, and more specifically how solitude and community go hand in hand each other. Sounds very weird, sounds very complex, sounds very chill, I know, but bear with me. I'll be like power throughing my whole entire script here because I don't want this video to be longer than it is. And so if you miss out certain things or whatever, just pause the video and I don't know, take some notes or go back. But it's very interesting, serious. I kid you not. So recently I watched this video by Pastor Tim McKee of the Bible Project, which I highly recommend you should go and watch because it's such an interesting sermon and about, I guess, this topic of solitude and community and how it's such an overlooked topic in the Christendom and how these two seemingly conflicting words are actually so essential to who Jesus was and his lifestyle and his spirituality, and on top of that how Christ invites us to partake in it. Okay, I'll unpack this really big idea for you in the next few points. So, disclaimer, I will not be going to every single nitty-gritty point that Pastor Tim made. It's a lot, and I suggest that you should go and do it yourself. Just go watch it. I will put the link of the video down somewhere. But I rather would like to unpack certain stuff that really perked up my ears and made me sort of pause the video and question myself, What I'm about to say is basically notes that I wrote while listening to the video and listening to the sermon. So, yeah, it's not all the points that he made, but it's more of the broad strokes that he said. And I just want to unpack it with you guys. So, the first point that he said, or not say first point, one of the points that he said, are how sometimes the followers of Christ, which is us, Christians, sometimes fall into this wrong mindset that we are unable to emulate Christ's lifestyle because he is God and he is Christ and we are not. We are just humans. So therefore we don't even try to imitate him literally, but rather we try to just buy into his ethics, spiritual ethics and theology solely without changing our lifestyle to fit his, because he's God. How you expect me to follow whatever he does? But here's where Pastor Tim brought about a very interesting point when he says that we're not supposed to just buy into Jesus' spiritual ethics or theology, but also Jesus' lifestyle and his way of life. Why? Because it was through these basic spiritual practices that he engaged in that sustained him as a person, not just as a God. Pastor Tim then went on to talk about how give an example of how the first thing Christ did after his baptism in Matthew chapter 3 was to go into the wilderness, which is a barren land, for 40 days and 40 nights in solitude, where he was tempted by the devil, and that is found in Matthew chapter 4. To the modern reader, this might seem a little bit strange, like, and maybe even downright ludicrous, like why would Christ even do that? Like, why would anyone even do that? Go into the wilderness and starve for 40 days and 40 nights. But for Christ, it was essential to his being, and it was what he wanted to set the tone before he went to his ministry for. And when he was in the crowds, about to address, to talk to people, he would always retreat with his disciples in solitude first, before addressing the masses and the people that he so loves. And very interesting, this is a very interesting thing, because and that's why he always invites his followers, whether his modern day followers or his disciples at that time, to always be alone with him in private, to always seek the Father in private before going out to do anything. He talks about how, don't be like a hypocrite, where the Pharisees would be in the public square and then pray to God, so that everyone can see them, and that kind. I'm paraphrasing a Bible verse here, very badly, but you get the idea. So don't be a hypocrite that will always go into the public square and tell others, oh, how I'm praising God and how I'm praying to God, but rather seek Him privately, because that's where you truly will meet Christ face to face, and the Father face to face. And I think, and sometimes we think His lifestyle is impossible to execute or to emulate because He's God, but the Apostle Paul says that Jesus saved us in order for us to emulate Him, so that we can become a new humanity like Him, and a new human like Him. We can bring a new humanity down on earth. So there's no excuse to emulate Him action for action. When I heard this, I was quite literally, okay, that's a bad way of saying literally, I was quite mind blown. Yeah. Because sometimes as a teenager, I will find myself engaging in parties or like surrounding myself with friends all the time, and I think that is one way to defeat my FOMO, my fear of missing out, or my loneliness. But I don't know about you, I found learning about this truth that Christ intentionally retreats in solitude absolutely freeing. Sometimes we make fun of people, whether we mean it or not, who stay at home in solitude, to be loners or introverts, or I don't know, maybe yourself, who is always stuck at home and wants to get invited to all these parties and hang out with friends, but don't have anyone that really kind of invites you for stuff like this. Don't worry, me too, sometimes. And when we watch social media, like when we look at our phones and we see our friends having a great time, it's like, it makes us feel left out. But Christ in the Bible purposefully, that's the key word, retreated to solitude in order to connect with the community around Him. Before speaking to a crowd, you gotta pray first. About the start of ministry, go to the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights. This connection is what drove Christ to be more in tune with His spiritual Father. In tune just basically means to be more like His spiritual Father. Pastor Tim also talked about how being in solitude counterintuitively makes us more ourselves, more human than when we are with people. Why is that so? Because when we surround ourselves with people, we tend to change people's opinions and perceptions of us, whether we like it or not. We outrightly choose certain words, do certain actions, say certain things, we dress certain ways, talk in a certain way, talk about certain things, in order for a particular group of people to change their opinion of us, whether for the good or the worse, whether for the betterment of it, whether for the betterment of our image, or whether for the detriment of our image. And we want them to form an opinion of us that we want them to view us as. And this is very subconscious, it's just how humans work. So when we are alone in private, we're not trying to impress anybody because no one is around. This is not considered private because I'm talking towards a camera, and the camera I know is gonna be, and this video is gonna be recorded so that people will see. So it's not technically private, but private means absolutely no one and nobody is around you. Just you, God, and maybe the Bible. That's about it. There's really nothing around you. So that's what alone means. And we're not trying to impress anybody, but we're trying to impress the one, which is God, God the Father, who gave us this life. So yeah, that's solitude. Where are you in this practice of drawing yourself away and praying every day? Jesus says it's a crucial part of His everyday character. It built Him to be more like His Father and more in tune, more receptive to what His Father has to say. Food for thought. Another interesting thing is how Pastor Tim mentions about not being in solitude, but rather what I would sum up and coin as a purposeful solitude. If you struggle with being alone and constantly want to be surrounded with friends or people all the time, ask yourself, why are you scared to be alone? If yes, what makes you scared to be alone, and why? If you're already fine with being alone, that's great. If you're okay being sort of like a bit introverted or being more recluse, yeah, that's great. But we must always engage in purposeful solitude. where we retreat into solitude to connect with the Father, instead of connecting with our phones, Netflix, or whatever. Whatever I say this in absolute humility, because I feel like I'm talking to myself when I say this script, because that's what I like to do too. I like to watch Netflix, or like do some stuff that is not connecting with the Father at all when I'm alone. But that's wrong. Yeah, we must always engage in this habit of disconnecting to reconnect with Christ and with God the Father, in order to reconnect with the people around us and the community around us. It's this cycle where solitude and community is not at odds each other, but is something that Jesus did and invited us to do. This cycle of going to solitude in order to connect with the community around us, going to the solitude before connecting the community around us, is a pretty interesting concept, I guess. One other thing that Pastor Tim mentioned, that I would like to mention in this video too, was how he addressed that some Christians say, but didn't Jesus come to abolish like laws and practices and all this jazz, you know? Yes, sure, but no. He did come to abolish the lifeless rituals that was binding people that were from experiencing the freedom that they have in God. He came to abolish these constricting laws and practices that was binding people from experiencing who God is in their life. But we still need to follow certain traditions and rules and rituals, even in the modern day now. Why? Because we Christians are we humans are creatures of habit. Wow, stumble on that. Yeah, we are creatures of habit. So when Jesus asks us to follow him in these practices, we must understand that Christ came to abolish only lifeless rituals, but not those that are critical and essential to our being, that he so wants us to buy into, and that he so loves us. That's why he wants us to follow him in this ritual, if you want to call it ritual, practices. So there's no excuse. The fun part about this is that I haven't even finished watching this sermon yet. I'm about like 3/4 of the way done. And I have learned such a ton, you know, so much, you know. This whole entire video is basically summing up what I've learned. So I invite you to do the same. Find how solitude is more freeing than it really actually is. Yeah. So that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all next time. God bless you all. Bye. Bye. Bye.